Okay, hi everyone. Welcome. My name is Andy Chan Donald. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Associate Artistic Director at ACT. Welcome to my kitchen. Let me know if I can get you a grilled cheese sandwich or anything. And let's introduce Pam McKinnon and Jennifer Bielstein. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Pam McKinnon, Artistic Director at ACT. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Yeah, I'm eager to get this conversation going.
Yeah, same here. Jennifer Bielstein, Executive Director at ACT, she, her, hers. And welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is really exciting to know all of you are out there.
Yeah, thank you for gathering with us here over Zoom webinar. For those of us in the business of gathering, it feels so alien to be doing it virtually here. But here we are, and we're so appreciative that you're taking the time out of your afternoon to join us for this, and what we hope will be the first of several town halls and ACT community conversations while we remain sheltered in place. We want to thank you all, our generous supporters, donors, and subscribers for your continued support of ACT and your belief in live theater. We will be back. It's been a surreal few months for us during the shelter in place, as I'm sure it has for all of you. And we are contemplating the future of ACT and the performing arts writ large in the wake of this global pandemic. Usually it's the fundamental service that we offer, a gathering place that we as human beings flock to in times of crisis. And we can't do that right now, except over a virtual transom like this. But this moment has really forced us at ACT and our colleagues in the community and in the national field to challenge ourselves, challenge our methods of making art and models of business and providing service to our communities. And so some of these questions that we're asking ourselves are long overdue, frankly. And what's been a silver lining in all of this, if you can view it that way, has been connecting with our local and national colleagues with the kind of frequency and rigor that we seldom usually do. And we're creating forums like this one to connect with all of you and to keep in touch with you. So we're going to cover a lot today about the state of ACT, the state of the arts in general, what we know and what we don't know, what we and others are doing to prepare our spaces for audiences, staff, crew, and artists when we come back. And I encourage you to ask questions as they arise. Please use the Q&A tab in the bottom of your Zoom screen to ask those questions. And I'll do my best as moderator to have them answered by the three of us. Chances are we may answer some of them in the conversation anyway, or we may not have the answer, but rather just more questions. And we certainly may not get to all of them in this hour, but we'll try. Also, feel free to chat with us and chat with each other on the side. Just make sure that your chat is set up to all attendees and panelists. But just for the sake of clarity and for my own sanity, I'm only going to be looking at the Q&A tab specifically for questions that you want to ask of the panel. You can also email us any thoughts, musings, follow-up questions, and ideas for topics for future town halls at askact@act-sf.org. Just to repeat that, and we'll throw it in the chat, it's askact@act-sf.org. So just to jump in, I thought we would start, Pam and Jennifer, if you could talk a little bit about just before we sheltered in place, some of the action steps that ACT took before the shelter in place was put into order, what we've done, just to recap and kind of contextualize what happened leading up to the shelter in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to jump in. I was in previews and then opened Tony Stone as both artistic director and director of that project. We opened March 11th and subsequently shut it down the next morning. So the opening of Tony Stone wound up being our closing performance. This is when we had both Tony Stone and Gloria running. So Gloria was running in the Strand. Tony Stone opened at the Geary. And luckily, although there's no luck involved, everything is intentional, we had video captured both of those productions for Tony Stone in an early preview, second preview, I think the Friday before that Wednesday, and Gloria in its second week of previews. And so we video captured those. Tony Stone was a 2-camera shoot, which is rare. These are usually captured just for archival purposes. So for instance, if an understudy had to go on early and you needed to have a reference for staging, or, truly just for archival, years from now, come to an office and watch it, on a laptop, to get, sort of information. It's for internal use only. But we recognized with the coronavirus and hearing, the talk of sheltering in place, that capturing these 2 shows was all that more important. So Friday, by Friday the 13th, we had canceled our season. By Tuesday the 16th, we were sheltering in place in very rapid turnaround. And this, Jennifer can speak, more to this. And through a lot of union concessions, we were able to share these videos to first ticket holders. And then later we were able to get another round of union concessions and have people actually purchase tickets to be able to watch these videos. So that was one of our earliest actions. And we were really early in the field in doing this. And, sort of, again, you look for these silver linings. We, got great national press about both productions, about the availability, about, sort of even just the conversation of using these, of being able to feature these recently shut down, because of a situation beyond our control, videos to our audiences. It also brought up a lot of questions, and I'm sure we'll get into this later as well, but questions of accessibility and, just simple access. What has been really interesting, not surprisingly, normally, I'm an artist that creates something that is consumed, at 8 p.m., curtain up, local audiences. You have to be there. But there is something, amazing about sharing, knowing that there's some audience in Helsinki, Finland, and Istanbul, Turkey that watched Tony Stone. So somehow, there are some very interesting practices right now and interesting conversations that, while out of necessity and even out of sort of responsive kind of panic at times, we want to find ways to calmly thread these through and pull things like that forward. And that was sort of our first week. Jennifer, I don't know if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will expand on that. So with the recordings, I mean, we all knew this was coming, and we, along with Berkeley Rep, decided to reach out to the unions first with support from our other colleagues to figure out a way to make this possible that made sense for all of the artists involved with the production, and can make it go forward. So we really got to set the standard for what everyone was doing around the country as this started to evolve. But I was thinking, as we were setting up this town hall, about where we were. I mean, only 10 weeks ago, so we knew this was coming to the States. It was happening in China and South Korea and all over. And, we started making plans. We thought we had a minute to make a plan, and we had a 3-level plan of what to do now. Remember when we were washing our hands and using sanitizer and reminding each other to do that and to not touch our faces. And, then we had, stage 2 of the plan was going to be about when there was panic, but there wasn't an official shutdown. And then stage 3 was going to be when we were officially closed and shut down. And we were making the plans, and then it all just happened so quickly. So we were just continually responding. And that week that Pam referenced of being in rehearsal for Tony Stone and then opening of Tony Stone, I mean, I think these days will be forever cemented in my mind. But, on that day of opening, Wednesday, March 11th, that morning, the city had said gatherings of 1,000 or more were not allowed. So we spent the day and said, okay, well, we're under 1,000. So let's make it through Sunday. Let's just wrap up and do the right thing and end early. And then by that night, the governor said gatherings of 250 or more can't happen. And we closed everything down, as Pam said. So there's just been so much to respond to initially. And now we're finally moving to the place where we're able to plan more clearly for the longer future.
And how many unions, there was a question already, how many of the unions did we have to negotiate with in order to get this done
Three.
Yeah.
So we have three unions with whom we bargain nationally, and they represent our actors and stage managers, directors and choreographers, and our designers. And Pam is the most recent president of SDC that represents the directors and choreographers, and I'm currently president of the League of Resident Theaters that represents 76 regional theaters around the country that work on those agreements with the unions.
And do you know, I mean, could we understand a little bit of why, just a little bit of why the unions, and it's completely understandable, but we might just, for context reasons, why there might be some resistance initially, but obviously pre-pandemic, but there would be resistance to just streaming all shows online, or there would be some, something to talk about, right? It's not just simply as just saying, can we stream this? Yes. It's not an easy answer for any of us. Can you explain a little bit what goes into the thinking of, the sort of the issues of streaming live performance online, and why this was an exception?
Yeah, Pam, do you want to jump in from an artist perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from an artist perspective, the live art form is precious, and quite often, like when these videos, as I said, are truly supposed to be archival, truly internal. They're done with a single camera, usually at the back of the house, strictly as sort of to understand the ground plan, to understand, oh, that prop got handed to that person. Then they're not artful, or they're very utilitarian. So there is, certainly, the Met Opera has, has a business model with, multiple cameras, and they have, big budgets to capture their shows. The National Theatre in London, so NT Live, that is also, sort of now a well-oiled machine that captures their shows with multiple cameras, and, really takes the time to do that. We just in the US just haven't built that model. And so, I think there is, even thinking specifically about our Tony Stone capture, Don Ursula, the actor who wonderfully played Tony Stone, was incredibly nervous. She recognized she had no control. She recognized her union, Actors Equity, had already said yes to our sharing this capture. I assured her it was a very good performance. She was nervous about that. This was really early previews, but it happened to be one of those shows that kind of clicked. Had it been, the next day, it would have been a wonky performance, but it wasn't. So she felt relieved having her director say that to her. We also had a second camera. We also knew that the actors were mic'd, so we were actually, so the sound was really good. I mean, I think a fear of an actor is even just thinking like the vocal energy needed to fill a 1,000-seat space looks ludicrous when it's captured with a camera. So those kinds of modulations, Dawn's specific fear, and a lot of actors hold this, is that this would now get shared out, would now become sort of what Dawn is known for, of being this grotesque big performer, because the camera would translate it that way. As a director, a fear of my staging will get used by other sort of, non-scrupulous directors. I mean, there's issues of, intellectual property. There's issues of my performances being judged through a different medium. So artists hold it really, really dear. But these conversations, do get had, and artists also recognize that there's something exciting. There's opportunity about your work being shared. I have fans in, Istanbul, Turkey, as I said, but it's a frequent conversation that is now getting put on the front burner.
And how a few folks want to know how the actors are doing. And I think all of our community of actors, the actors in those specific shows I know that I've spoken to a number of actors who certainly, once they saw the performance of Tony Stone and Gloria that we put out, were thrilled that people still got to see their performance for another 2 weeks. but it's been a tricky moment for actors, and we've been trying to check in with them, and we've been trying, we at ACT have been supporting the Performing Arts Worker Relief Fund that Theater Bay Area is running. We supported it as part of our virtual fundraiser a couple weeks ago. So have either of you talked to any of local artists or anyone in the field, and how are they doing right now?
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of artists. I mean, it's an existential time right now. I mean, there are a lot of people that are looking for creative outlets, online, and I think people are generating, a lot of video content. Creative people need that creative space, and the creative space is now virtual. So that is happening. But of course, people have had their livelihoods taken away. Freelance artists hop from job to job, and at this juncture, a lot of those artists may not have a job for possibly even a year. I mean, I certainly know that my director choreographer friends, have just, had sort of job after job, sort of really difficult, but completely understandable phone calls from producers. And the field is in turmoil.
And so, go ahead, Jen.
I was just saying, and Andy, you mentioned it, the fund that Theater Bay Area launched to help people because so many are without work. And the city also released some funds for individual artists and small arts organizations to take advantage of. And the mayor yesterday shared that they have funded or provided funds for about 700 individuals across the Bay, in San Francisco.
Yeah, there's a lot, there seems to be a number of organizations or a number of movements right now to help support an acknowledgement that the arts, performing arts especially, cannot function as in any kind of revenue streaming way right now. And so there is some acknowledgement, and we have, London Breed right now is talking about it, which is good. So I think,
yeah, it's an incredibly, it's a hardest hit nationwide, sort of worldwide, disaster right. for this industry. Yeah. Foundations are popping up, I think, to try and, just make sure that people, freelance artists in particular, are, having enough to pay their rent.
Right.
Yeah, I know we're not letting you ask another question, Andy, but I want to add to that. I'm on the Mayor's Economic Recovery Task Force, and we had a meeting last week, and they showed some data, and the arts and entertainment industry, in terms of, is the hardest hit in our community in terms of job losses. Close behind are other services and also restaurants. So it's big.
And so now that we're in shelter in place, can you talk a little bit about some of the questions that we've been wrestling with internally as a staff and sort of thinking about the future? But what are some of the things? How did we react to the shelter in place? What are some of the protocols that we're starting to put in place? How are they sort of looking as much as we can to the future? What are those discussions like right now?
Sure. I'm not sure how much everyone understands about what a complex operation and organization ACT is. I mean, we have our main stage programming, but we have a huge, huge investment in training, a 3-year fully accredited Masters of Fine Arts program for actors, training for adults through Studio ACT, training for youth through our Young Conservatory, with professional development, something called the San Francisco Semester, Summer Training Congress. We have our education and community programs as well. And so there's a lot that we've needed to assess really quickly. I would say we're the next kind of immediate questions, like what do we do with everything that we do? It was very clearly mandated by the directives in our community that we could no longer gather in large groups. And our classes, I really applaud all of our staff and faculty and they were able to convert a lot of those classes to online and to continue them remotely. And participation, I mean, a large number of the students and participants have still been taking those classes, and we've been able to provide them remotely. And Pam may want to expand up on this, but I'm so impressed with our MFA program and faculty and artists that converted some of the performances that were to be in person into online, Zoom productions and radio plays. And I just think some of the work has been really, really ingenious.
Yeah, I agree. So we had commencement just a couple of days ago, Monday, I guess, for the graduating class of 2020. And students, spoke very eloquently about, 2 months ago when this all happened, having this anxiety and maybe even anger of like, this isn't what I want. This is impossible. This is an actor training program. You have to be in the space. You have to, be physically part of something. And as Jennifer said, I mean, the faculty and students out of necessity switched gears and did it. And, I know that, that Emma Van Laer spoke at commencement just so eloquently about actually feeling that the organization, so ACT, kind of gave her permission, again, out of necessity, but it felt ultimately like permission to actually grow and permission to do something she didn't know she could do. And coming into this moment with these new tools, it's probably not the way you want to start in an actor training program, but definitely I feel like the last 2 months that our students and faculty have done amazing creative work, and also just their training continued, which has been great. And that also, translates into other education programs, and there our young conservatory. Also, Andy, you and I attended a workshop reading of a new musical, and the students are there. I mean, they're in their bedrooms on Zoom. They are acting. They are working their craft, and it's really impressive.
And other things, I mean, we had to jump into working remotely immediately and suddenly. We're a people-based business, a people-based art form. And so we shifted to that quickly on March 17th. And I also applaud our staff at large and our board and everyone. We have Zoom meetings all the time instead of in-person meetings. And we've figured out our systems that aren't always that easy to suddenly become remote when you're not a company that has had a huge investment in technology and infrastructure. And so we've made it work and really adjusted. And, we're thinking now also about when can we return to gathering in person, and what are some of the ways we can make it safe for all of you as audience members, for all of our staff, for all of our artists on the stage, for all of our crew working behind the scenes, just for everyone. What are those social distancing protocols? What are the sanitizing measures? And we have a team working on that internally, and we're also in communication with colleagues across the country and event organizers and others that are doing a lot of work in this area as well. I think we're all trying to figure it out simultaneously. So we're trying to stay in touch so that we're not reinventing the wheel all the time.
Right. And I think, let's talk a little bit about that, about preparing our spaces for when we can return, and what what those spaces are going to look like and feel like for our audiences, artists, crew, staff. We've been looking at diagrams, certainly, that has socially distanced seating, that reduces our seating capacity, anywhere from, 1,000 to a couple hundred, few hundred, maybe. We even had to start thinking about little things like, what's the bathroom line going to look like at intermission? How do you keep a socially distanced bathroom line and a concession stand? Are there other aspects that we are thinking about, we may not have the answers to, but that we or the field are thinking about in terms of reopening our venues?
I mean, certainly, we're doing a lot of thinking and in conversation about having programming that is both live as well as digital. And thinking about programming and even story content, particular plays that can lend themselves to that, feels important for the next 14, 16 months. Both sort of moments of like digital content that is for audience engagement, but then thinking in X number of months, in early sort of a time when we can gather together. Obviously not all of our audience is going to want to, until there is a vaccine, and figuring out how to make our spaces safe, but recognizing that some people will not want, even at that moment, to gather. So how can we make stuff available that is made to be live and performed, and in our space, but it can also be consumed, digitally.
Right. And in addition to audiences, obviously thinking about our artists and our crew backstage, I mean,
Yep.
how do you stage a play, that might have a kiss or a fight or something like that, and be safe and make sure that our artists are taken care of as well.
Yeah. No, there are
Exactly.
a lot of conversations, going on, throughout, organizations and, and cross-organizationally across the country, as well as obviously the unions. And we're in constant contact.
Yeah, our sets for Tony Stone and Gloria are still on those stages, and so our production team is looking at how do we load them out, and how do we responsibly load them out with social distancing. What can we learn from the construction industry that's gone back to work? What are the ways to keep everyone safe in doing that work?
And then nationally in the field, I mean, what are some of the conversations that we're having with peers around the country, or, how are we also talking about with our peers how the local arts and performing, and how local arts organizations, them reopening or them staying closed, how they impact our local economies, and what are some of the conversations that you're having with our peers all over?
I mean, one interesting conversation with some of the larger theaters in the Bay Area was even talking about, like, can we coordinate our show schedules, and even like our load-ins of sets, and to make sure that that technical artisans, as well as actors, as well as designers, don't have to make the normally really difficult choices in this time of most likely fewer productions, this time of scarcity. So if we can coordinate schedules so that a load in, if it can, not be on top of each other, and that means that people can hop from job to job, as opposed to making really difficult decisions and saying, I guess I have to turn this job down in order to do that job. So really trying to be proactive, really trying to help a lot of amazing freelancers in the Bay.
Yeah, and I mean, we really do stimulate the economy and local economies. All of you, when you come to the theater, you spend money on transportation, on parking, maybe going to a restaurant, on maybe retail, and other services. And so it's pretty huge and instrumental to other businesses being able to survive. So I think right now a lot of the work is also in terms of advocacy and getting support for artists and organizations, so that we can all make it through this period where we can't gather in person. And so advocacy with local, state, and federal representatives to, help, continue the increased unemployment benefits, the Small Business Administration PPP loans, which have been really helpful to organizations, and that will hopefully enable to hopefully have expanded forgiveness of those loans for organizations. So all the ways to help us navigate this interim time before everyone can get back confidently, I think, is part of the work that we're doing right now as well.
So I see a number of folks asking in the Q&A various questions about the current season and your subscription and viewing opportunities. I would ask you to direct those questions to the email address askact@act-sf.org, and we can get those answered for you. So tipping towards the future a little bit, and the future of ACT, or at least ones that we can kind of project and dream about a little bit. I know many folks on here are curious about next season. And we have already announced one show before all of this happened, which was the Lehman Trilogy. So we can give a little bit of an update on that, because its production on Broadway has been suspended, which has directly affected our ability to present it in September. And not to mention that we don't think we can necessarily open the Geary in September. But we should talk a little bit about just our thinking. We're hoping to make a season announcement in the coming few weeks. We're still very much in discussion about what the details of it are going to be, but perhaps we can give a kind of a window into what we're the kind of thinking for next season, and what can we say about next year. I know there are a lot of subscribers here watching who hopefully you'll continue to subscribe, because we will certainly be back, and we have a really exciting slate of things that we're working on right now. But what can we say about next year? And then I guess moving forward, just the future of ACT in general.
Do you want to jump in, Pam, or me?
Why don't you start?
So, right now we're getting really creative about, and Pam alluded to it, or sort of said it, about ways to have a season during this next year that can be supported, that can support social distancing and lowered attendance, but also be available to those of you digitally who are in a vulnerable population and can't come to the theater, or don't want to just yet. And so we want to find a way to bridge this time. And so I think we'll have some exciting shows and ideas to share with you really soon. And we're really thinking very flexibly in terms of timing and what we do, because as we all know, we get new information and learning about what is possible each day, each week, and as each month goes by. And so we're remaining flexible and adaptable in making these plans. But and so, not to be completely coy about it, but we do hope that we can announce them specifically to you in the coming weeks. And we're really working with our staff and our board to finalize those plans and make sure they can be supported. And we'll need you on board. And so we hope that you'll tune in when we can share it, and that you'll come back and go on this journey with us through this next year.
And we're also thinking of thinking of the calendar, thinking of the next season, not necessarily only sort of September to June, but thinking of it, September sort of through June 22. So, making a really big announcement. And I always wind up in these Zoom meetings when we're talking about the season, sort of using my hands and sort of, thinking of, sort of the programming, perhaps being more exclusively digital for a while, growing into a mix of live and digital, and then eventually, as the world gets better, and we have to be a fact-based organization, we have to have our ear to the, sort of poised towards Sacramento, poised toward, City Hall, and also, listen to, public health experts. Notice I'm not saying Washington, D.C., and really go step by step by step, You know, knowing that, you know, probably, you know, our conservatory might very well, you know, continue to be largely remote in the early fall. And then gradually, you know, smaller groups will be able to gather, and then, you know, larger and larger and larger. So, you know, we want to be responsible as well as take advantage for those new safe moments and those openings. But you know, I recognize, you know, sort of thinking about, you know, the governor of California with his 4-phase opening, I recognize that theater is phase 4 when, you know, and even though theater isn't usually mentioned, but we're in that concert sporting event place. But that doesn't mean that classrooms won't be able, you know, to be in person, you know, prior to phase 4. You know, but it's going to take some time.
And a few folks are asking about not only, you know, what kind of slate we have for next year, and I will say, just as a little, you know, insider baseball, like just before we shut down, we were almost ready to go with lining up next season. We basically had the slate, and we're very excited to present it. All of those shows, which we are hoping to do, as Pam said, over the next, you know, 18 months to 2 years for sure. But then there were also the 2 canceled productions that we had of Rocky Horror and Four Yellow Rednecks. And so obviously some folks who were particularly excited about those 2 shows want to know what the future of those 2 might be. You know, are we in conversation with those artists still? And I would say, and, you know, we very much are. We're still trying to figure out, we were very excited about them as well. And we want to present them. So we're trying to figure out when we can do that, when we can present those shows. Some other folks are asking about the economics of all this. I mean, I think we all know the answer to this, but, you know, with this socially distanced theater, what is our thinking about how we can make the economics of this work when all of a sudden a 1,000-person seat theater needs to go down to 250 tickets a night? You know, are there discussions happening field-wide amongst the unions, what are some of the conversations that you're having about how this is going to change just the economy of putting on a performance?
The economics of it are really, really tough to make work. You know, when we depend on filling, you know, especially at ACT's scale, when we depend on filling a large part of the Geary and can only seat 200, the numbers don't work. So we'll continue to be dependent upon your generosity and subsidy, you know, contributions for the work that we do. And I hope that many of you are able to continue with that kind of support. I think the commitment to our season tickets is really invaluable in terms of ensuring that we can make a season work. And then some of what we would be doing and allowing you to purchase a virtual ticket to see it in person or perhaps remotely is another way to generate revenue for those seats that are physically empty, but you're filling your seat in your own, you know, in the comfort of your own home, or some of the ways right now. But it's a great question, and it's what we're grappling with every single day and have been grappling with every single day for weeks now, is how to make the numbers work in total. Again, you know, I said we're a people-based business. I mean, most of our expenses go into people, into artists, into creative team members, into people working behind the scenes and people working in support of the shows. So it's a tough one. If you have suggestions or ideas, please pass them along.
Yeah, and I think some of it too is you know, from a marketing and ticket selling side, is rethinking. You know, in the same way that we're rethinking what a season looks like and how long it is, and, you know, how many shows we do, it's also forcing us to think about, you know, and some people are asking this, do you anticipate rolling out different iterations of what a season subscription entails, what it means? Because not only because the way that we present, the format we present it in, the length of it might be different, but that some folks, you know, their bottom lines are being impacted right now and may not be able to, you know, a subscription has a different value now than it once did, particularly as we continue to find content online or have streaming subscriptions online. So we're also thinking about, and I hope you can jump in here, but thinking a little bit about the formal ticket selling model of theater and how that might financially impact how we make this work too.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at all of that. Thanks for bringing it up. And we're committed to keep prices accessible. So we always have a range of prices, right now or prior to closing because of COVID-19, subscription in the Geary could be purchased for as low as $14 a ticket. So, so we're committed to keeping low prices out there, and we're developing some flexible models and looking at it going forward. And we know that this has impacted everyone in our community, and that translates to your ability to commit to a subscription. So we will have a range of ways to participate.
Yeah, and I think artists are inherently creative, and we had so not only is the Tony Stone set in the Geary, but the Gloria set is in the Strand. Not that this saves a ton of money, but if well, Tony Stone ideally is going to go to Arena Stage in DC, but if there's anything on the set of Gloria that could be used that doesn't need to be in a dumpster, let's use it, right? I mean, and this is also something we're talking about with other, theater, Bay Area theater artists and Bay Area theater leaders, is how can we, be creative and share resources. And sometimes that can be as simple as, that wall that was built for that play, that could be repurposed, or that set that's in storage for one theater, is there an aspect of that that can be repurposed? I mean, we want to get really, really creative so that we can put great stories on the stage.
And I think it will impact some of the programming choices we make too, right? That if some things are, conceived to be digital, if they are conceived to be digital and all of a sudden we realize that there are people in Japan and Helsinki that are watching us, and I mean, I can't help but think that it will impact the way that we think about what we program. On the other hand, we are a San Francisco-based theater. We serve the community of San Francisco and the Bay Area, and so we will always be a gathering place for this specific community. But I think different kinds of seasons, different lengths of runs, different kinds of shows that might be more different kinds of shows that might be more acceptable for socially distanced experiences. I mean, I can't help but think it's going to impact what we program.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have about 12 minutes left, and I think we should also pivot to our training program, the future of our training programs and our education and community programs, and just to speak a little bit from what we know about, how is this going to impact the future of the MFA program, which is one of our crown jewels, certainly, and then also how it's impacted or will impact our education and community programs as well. So either of you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll jump in first, but I mean, so we'll continue with our training and education work online for as long as it's necessary to be working remotely. I think with especially our education and community program efforts, some of that will be dictated by when schools say that it's okay to come back to do in-person classwork, and we'll be taking the lead from the school system and when we can go back to doing work in the schools, but we'll conduct it remotely for as long as it is necessary to be remote. The MFA program, again, has been so creative in initially pivoting to remote work. So that will continue until schools can return. And Melissa Smith, the head of our conservatory program, and others have been really in touch with universities and colleges around the country about what they're doing. And everyone is making their plans and then remaking them day after day in terms of what they think they can do. So we're still in the thick of that, but we're committed to that program and holding it this next year for sure. And we'll do it remotely and then move to in person as it becomes safer to do so.
I mean, we are the last MFA, MFA actor training program that's connected to a professional theater that isn't on a university campus or isn't part of a university's, purview. And so some of that makes us incredibly nimble. We aren't part of, sort of like a larger campus dorm kind of setting. We have classes that have 12 actors each year. So, while an NYU or a Yale or even a Juilliard, which is bigger, because they do both actor training as well as music and dance, they're just larger campuses. Our 12 and our core faculty of 6 and then adjunct faculty beyond that, it's a small, nimble group. And so we can actually move quickly. And as things become more certain or, the outside world changes, we can slot in fast.
Mm-hmm. And I know, our education and community department, Juan Manzo and Stephanie Wilborn and Vince Emilio and Hannah Clegg have been really continuing to make contact and keep in contact with the various groups that we work with outside of ACT to ensure that even if accessibility is an issue, that we are still figuring out creative ways of providing a service to them. And I think, one of the things that we're doing, I don't know if some of you have seen on our social media feeds or in our Interact at Home, is Stephanie's incredible 10-minute improv videos that a lot of people have been using with their families at home, and it's been a lot of fun. So we're trying to be flexible given the circumstances, but we remain committed to those prongs of our organization, the community and education, the training, and the main stage productions in this moment.
Well, and to even say what personal care is given. I mean, yeah. Stephanie holds the relationships with a lot of our community partners, and I think that she's even gone out during these times and dropped materials off at different community centers and organizations for people, all in a responsible way, but because people are in need. And so I applaud her and everyone's work with that.
A few folks are asking about the Lehman trilogy and if we are going to do it. And if you missed us talk about it before, yes, our intention is to do it. We have to rebook it. There will be information on our website if you've expressed interest in that particular show. We're impacted by Broadway being shut down. We were going to be the production directly after Broadway. They were going to actually literally move the set and the production from Broadway to the Geary Theater. And since they are postponing that production until Broadway can reopen, we are sort of at the mercy of when that happens. But the National Theater and ACT are working together to make sure Lehman Trilogy comes to the Geary at some point. I think, a question to end on that's coming up, which is kind of perhaps a bright future ahead of us, is what do you expect? What are any long-term positive developments to come from this difficult moment in terms of productions, education, audience experience, et cetera?
I mean, we've touched on it. I mean, I do feel that because this is a worldwide phenomenon, that communication among organizations, among people within organizations that sort of heretofore at times could be competitive or just silent, just we've entered an era of communication. We've entered an era of transparency and sharing practices and being vulnerable, even though, you step into a meeting with, fellow artistic directors and like, okay, here's the worst thing that happened to me today. How did you deal with something that's probably happening or around the corner about to happen at your organization? That feels fantastic. And that feels new. I think, artists are a scrappy group, and artists can at times feel competitive because the pie feels finite. which is, you know, a ludicrous way to think about art. It's a ludicrous way to think about, you know, an industry, but it can, you know, it can sort of affect how you deal with your peer group. So that, I think, has opened up completely. You know, there's also, you know, amazing things about, we've already touched on this too, amazing things about access. You know, if we can pull some of this, you know, digital content forward, you know, live streaming or captured, you know, material, and capture it right so everyone feels proud about it, so that it is part of almost this new art form. I know that you know, associate director of the conservatory, Peter Kuo, has either he has coined, or he, in my brain, he has coined this term of live video, you know, live video theater. That it's live. I mean, it's sort of like going back to like live TV, you know, early moments in the 50s when TV was a new medium, that, you know, it's theater, but it is streamable. You know, and that you know, Tony Stone was also seen by, you know, a few people who are incarcerated. That's amazing. That is fantastic. We want to pull some of that, you know, some of these necessary practices, or in this necessary moment, you know, became opportunities. We want to pull some of that stuff forward. So, you know, I feel very excited about that. So, you know, communication, transparency, and using technology in really smart ways to actually, you know, make people feel what they feel in our theaters, which, you know, can, you know, help people, you know, sort of deal with something. You know, stories help us practice what is hard. We're going through a hard moment. So sharing these stories, creating new neurons in the brain, opening people's hearts a little bit, you know, that we're able to do that in this moment of sheltering in place feels really vital.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. You know, it is interesting. I feel that we've always been collaborative as a field and shared things, but, you know, I've been on Zoom calls with colleagues every week, multiple times a week, different groups of colleagues. And we're always like, why didn't we do this more frequently? So with the League of Resident Theaters, we've been holding, you know, usually we meet in person twice a year. Now we've been meeting every 2 weeks, you know, and have 150 people on a Zoom meeting sharing what they're learning and experiencing and responding to. And so that's been terrific. And Pam said it about technology. I think we've learned that we can operate effectively remotely. I don't think we want to be remote all the time, but it's definitely been a learning about how to have a more flexible work environment and collaborative environment that can be accommodated remotely. And then also, our planning cycle is not as long as museums and operas and some other art forms, but our planning cycle has always been 6 months to 18, you know, to a year to 18 months out. And, you know, we've proven that we can actually turn it around in 5 to 6 weeks. It has not been easy. It has not been easy at all. But I think that's learning in itself in terms of our adaptability and flexibility and responsiveness.
Yeah, and I think I'm talking to colleagues and counterparts of mine all over the country. You know, while we are using this moment to explore what theater can be when we can't be in a theater, I think everyone's intention is still steadfast and true that theater is a live medium, and that we cannot wait to be back in the room, and that everything that we do will still originate from that backbone and that original DNA of being a theater. So I know even if some of this digital content isn't as compelling for some as being in a live theater is, rest assured that we will never not be a live theater, and that we will be back, and we'll probably stronger than ever. And we look forward to seeing you in our spaces. So thank you all for joining us. Just to close, we will be doing these again, so stay tuned. Please make sure that you email askact@act-sf.org to email us any thoughts, musings, follow-up questions, ideas for topics for future town halls. We're also going to send out a follow-up survey that should be in your inbox soon, so please fill that out as well. We're going to leave the chat up for about 5 more minutes. Once we sort of sign off air, we'll leave the chat up so we can keep the conversation going for a few more minutes in case you want to drop any thoughts in there. But thank you so much. Thank you to our loyal supporters and subscribers for getting behind ACT, especially during this tough moment for us and for the entire theater community. And we will see you soon over the virtual transom.
Thank you.
Thanks
very
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Bye for now.
Bye.
Stay safe.